Hey, this is Dylan with CDB Vids. Today we're going to be doing a kind of a series of pulling the motor out of the 75 Camaro. We're going to do a little how-to to pull the motor, a couple steps to do before. Kind of the tools you'll need to pull a motor, or cherry picker and a motor mount if you have one to keep it off the ground and getting stuff into it. And we'll go through the process. The first process I know you have to do is you have to take the carburetor off, and you're going to have to take the fan, the belt system off. So we'll show you how to do that. But today is just another restoration video on the Camaro. So
just a disclaimer, we're learning as we go as well. So if we do something wrong, hopefully we figure it out. The first step Dylan is taking lots of pictures so we have a good reference guide when we're putting everything back together. It's very helpful with a lot of mechanic shit, especially if you're not extremely experienced with it. Anything in particular you're taking pictures of, Dylan?
Just kind of taking a picture of the belt pattern itself. These older Camaros don't have a diagram like a new truck would, so just making sure I get that on right. I don't have a pulley puller, so what I'll have to do is loosen the alternator up, slide it down, the belt should pop off. I'll be getting a new belt because I see that one is cracking a little bit. It's kind of old. Honestly, I don't know when. I have no idea how old this motor is, but I know it's not stock in this Camaro anyways. So I'm kind of pulling the motor just to double check everything's still working right, and then later on in the future we'll be putting like a roller cam in it, some flat top pistons, and maybe some aluminum heads as well, just to make it lighter and a little more power as much as we can. So
yeah, as you can see, whoever rebuilt it got some valve cover leakage. It's pretty common on any older engine, but it's going to be a show car. We want it to look real nice.
We got new gaskets for everything, so when the motor's ready to go, we'll replace all the gaskets and clean it up so it looks like show car quality.
So, as you can see, we got the alternator out. What are you doing next, Dylan?
So actually this is my ground for my battery. I got to take that off so we don't pull it with the engine. And this is the fuel pump. So we will have to disconnect the fuel line and drain some gas out. So we'll do that before we pull the engine for sure. But the next step is getting the water pump off. And it looks like it's maybe two bolts there and two bolts on that side too. So.
Yeah, 3 bolts. You got one there, and then that one right there hooks into
on
it.
On the power steering pump.
Yeah.
So we will take that off. This is the second belt on it.
Still deciphering how we're going to get that one off, but we'll figure it out. Alright, I'm starting to take the water pump off now. It's got 5 bolts or so. Thing I don't know if he's ready for is I've done 2 of those on my other pickups. So they're kind of bitch.
So there was 4 bolts, looks like 2, one up here, one down here, one up here, one down there, and there's actually one that's connecting to the power steering pump as well, and took those off and it comes right off. So we'll just get this hose off, kind of drain some of the antifreeze out of that again, and probably can't get any hoses.
I would put all new hoses on it anyway.
So you want to cut it?
Can. We took the power steering pump off. After we got the water pump off, it was just the one bolt that goes right here on this bracket to the motor, and it goes on the bracket right here on the back side of your power steering pump. And that got us the last hose off. So now the front of the motor is pretty wide open. You can get a good look at what that looks like. Now we'll probably just cover those holes or plug those holes since it's going to sit out here, keep any critters from getting in. But I think now we're going to start pulling some. Going to pull the carb off next?
Yeah.
So yeah, now we're going to pull the carb off.
So right now we're going to take the carburetor off. This is a pretty new Elderbrock. I believe it's a 1406. Yeah, and this is an electric choke one, so I'm going to disconnect the electric choke that I had wired since it would never hooked up when I actually bought it. So unhook that. That's pretty easy. We took off the hoses. This little one went to would be the passenger side, and this big one was an air hose. So looks like I have to take the throttle cable off, and it should just be 4 bolts that are on there. So. And we will have to take off this hose is the fuel line, so we'll have to take that off because it's connected down here. So
Throttle line cable's off. Here, put this back on so we don't lose it. Alright. What are we unhooking now?
I'm unhooking the spring. Spring is loose, and I'll just take off the bolts.
Alright. What size are they?
I'm guessing they are half.
Pretty much everything on this car is 9/16 or half, ain't it?
Yeah. They weren't in there very tight, I'll tell you that. That one's gonna be a little harder to get to.
See your wrench. and just leave it in and pull the motor, or pull it straight up.
I don't want to lose anything.
If you pull it straight up, it should be fine. No, this one didn't have a washer on it. I guess neither did that other one.
Need that screwdriver. So we got the water pump belts off, power steering off, and the carburetor off, and we just taped these up with some masking tape just so they weren't open to the air for rust or rodents or insects or dirt to get in there. So tape that off. But that was kind of all we had planned for this one. Kind of the next step would be taking off the actual motor, and we got a cherry picker that we will connect to this and pull it out with the transmission, and then I bought a engine stand, so we will put it on the engine stand, and while it's on the engine stand, that's kind of when we do our diagnosis of how everything worked. But we pulled that carb off, and it actually was a really decent carb, looked pretty new, the gasket was fresh, so I don't know quite yet what my plans are, if I'm going to keep it or if I'm going to put a Holly on, but hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you got any comments or questions, please leave them below, and like and subscribe. Thank you.